Welcome, everybody, to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Steve Kiyama, and I'm the host today for your Business Spotlight podcast. And I have the pleasure to introduce Kevin Fenton, the founder and chief creative officer of Walla Design, as my guest. So today we're going to talk about Kevin's business, his journey into business ownership, some of the challenges, best practices, and share a bit of a peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. So if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications. And let's get started. Kevin, welcome to the show. And thank you for being here today. Please give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit about your business while you're at it.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be a guest. A little bit about me. So as you mentioned, I run and own Walla Design. We're a brand strategy and design studio based here in DC. We're in our fifth year now. We, as in me slash a team that I sometimes work with. A little bit of history on my trajectory of where I landed when I decided to open my own company. I have I'll reverse engineer. So I moved from LA to DC about 8 years ago. While I was living in Los Angeles, I worked for a variety of companies. I have worked primarily a market research firm that I also had a design role in, where basically we would be part of some of the research teams on a lot of
Mhm.
brand strategy work, but it was
Right.
my job to interpret a lot of that data, put it together in a presentation that marketing people could understand without needing a math science degree. So
Mm.
I was basically kind of like an idiot's interpreter for very complex information. Um, and it's a fascinating position to have been in from a design perspective or creative perspective. For context, I love market research. I wanted to be a market researcher when I was in college, but I am terrible at statistics, and they would not advance me through that program without like some basic knowledge. So I was like, all right, that's fine. I'll go creative route. Um, so prior to that, before I lived in LA, I lived in Columbus, Ohio, where I was recruited out of graduate school to work at the Abercrombie and Fitch home office.
Oh.
And that was my very first proper design job.
Mm.
Um, the interesting thing about that role is that I was never, so for context, this was 2009, where that brand had already sort of peaked, and it was not necessarily on the way down, but they were no longer the market leader. They were chasing J. Crew at the time was like at their top of the line, top
Mhm.
of their game. So for me to go into that brand environment in an HQ capacity was one, it was my first real corporate job, but it
Mhm.
was also with a brand that I had zero consumer relationship with. I was never really an Abercrombie person. I understood what the brand was and what it meant, but at the time I was like in my early 20s. Those were not my people. I would have heart palpitations just walking by that store. I was like, I was not cool enough to be there at all. The
Mm.
fact that I ended up working at their home office is insane to me. But the interesting thing about that role was that I was able to sort of take a anthropological approach to that 3 year contract, where I could sort of study the brand itself while physically working on the brand. So my role
Mhm.
there was to work in I designed t-shirts for the women's and girls line for the core Abercrombie brand, and then I also did fleece and patches and figured out how to work with all of these different printing techniques and stitching techniques and all this crazy stuff. So I feel like my career trajectory leading up to working for myself was really just a series of ping-ponging around the industry in a non-linear way. And I say that because a lot of my friends from graduate school, who are all designers, brand strategists, they all basically went to New York, got plugged into some major agencies, big players. Um, but when I finished graduate school, I was too scared to go to New York. I didn't think I had really refined my skill set enough. I also not a fan of living in New York. I like visiting. My sisters live in New York. But that city is always under construction. It is dirty, it is loud, it is not for me.
Mm,
Um, so instead, when the Abercrombie and Fitch was like, "Do you want to move to Columbus, Ohio, where it is dirt cheap to live
mm,
and work for this weird brand?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go do that."
mm,
So, um, I'm kind of like backtracking, and I'm losing my train of thought a little bit on that one. But all to say, um, all of the events leading up to me actually opening my own business were just a collective of uh, a large swath of experiences from in-house HQ, boutique agency, large agency, market research agency, and just sort of culminating all of that information and realizing, all right, I think I know that a way to do brand design out, arguably better than what I had seen done in the past. But I don't want to discount the other agencies that I've ever worked for. But I knew that I could do it differently. Differently is a
mm,
better way to phrase that.
mm,
Uh, so what ended up happening is in 2020, we were all in lockdown, had to work from home. I've always been a
mm,
morning person, so I still naturally kind of wake up between 4:30 and 5 every morning and have been
mm,
that way for a while.
mm,
So what I would pre-COVID, I would get up at 4:35, go work out, get all, run errands, whatever, get ready, and I'd be at work by like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
mm,
Now that I had these 4 extra hours in the morning, I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. So I just started, I was like, well, if I think about it, if I do 4 hours in the morning, work a full work day, and then if I can muster another 4 hours after work, you basically kind of get 2 work days. So
mm,
why don't I just start freelancing and see if I can just like make a little money on the side? I had always kept freelance clients on the side. That actually started during my Abercrombie days because I wasn't convinced that I wanted to stay in that internal retail industry. I
mm,
still loved developing brands. I didn't love designing t-shirts.
mm.
Um, so that sort of entrepreneurial gigging, side gig, hustle,
No.
whatever we want to call it, that was always there. So I ended up started freelancing in 2020, picked up two clients, um, and then those two clients introduced me to other opportunities. And
Mm,
what ended up happening between, I guess it was really November 20 all the way through June 2021, that freelance list grew very quickly.
mm,
I think the pandemic also had played a role in
mm,
that because people were getting laid off, people were only hiring freelancers for very specific jobs. So it got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I can't sustain 16-hour workdays nonstop.
right,
So
right.
I had to make a really, really big choice. I had a little bit of money saved up. I actually was going to buy a condo. I had like found the one.
Mm,
Um, but then instead I was like, let's take a, a more risky bet, which is also a very entrepreneurial thing to do. And
right.
I was like, all right, I'm going to leave this salary role. I'm going to open a business and I'm going to just try to run the freelance business with the ultimate goal of trying to be a small to mid-size agency similar to the ones that I had worked with prior.
Got it.
Um, and so 4 years, 4.5, 5 years later, I have I'm still technically set up as a single member LLC, but I have worked with massive brands like Land Rover,
Mm,
Marriott, Baccarat Hotels, Porsche. Olipop was the biggest client that I had when I first
mm,
got started.
mm,
So right off the bat, in 4 years, I was able to do that thing that I think a lot of creatives in my world want and desire, which are these big brands, big projects, big names,
mm,
which are great. But I think they ultimately, when I look back on the 4 years, they really served an ego need more than anything else.
mm,
Happy for the work, loved the work, learned a lot from the work. But what I have found is that I actually really enjoy working with startups and other founders who kind of have that sort of subversive mentality of I can do it differently, or I don't mind putting in sweat equity because I believe so passionately in what I am doing,
Hmm.
uh, that it almost doesn't feel like work to me. It's
Yeah.
it's it's just a fulfilling thing that I do.
Yeah.
So I've had the opportunity to work with a few founders in that same headspace, and that work is always so much better than the work that I've done for these larger brands because they're a little less risk adverse. They're kind of willing to go a little, be a little bit edgier,
Yeah.
push the creative a little bit into a more less safe, still safe. I know I'm not trying to like do anything super nuts, but 9 times out of 10, a founder or an entrepreneur is far more willing to go with me to this other place where if I start the conversation with, what if we did, they're like all ears.
Hmm.
Versus in a corporate environment or with other larger brands, you can't even finish the sentence, what if, because you are handed a brand book and says, well, if it's not in the standards, then we can't do it. And it's like,
Hmm.
ugh, fine.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a very long-winded way of saying I have worked for my career trajectory has been all ping pong, no
Yeah.
real arc.
Hmm.
But landed where I am, love where I am, and I need and want to continue to work in this capacity.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Let's give the audience a little bit of context here. I want to talk a little bit about corporate structure in the sense of you're a sole owner as opposed to having partners.
Mhm.
Any outside investors at this point?
Not technically, no.
What does that mean?
My parents had helped a little bit in the beginning.
Got it. Okay. All right. Got that. Understood. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you're a business owner, regardless of how far in you are, um, there's a bunch of hats to be worn in the business. There's your internal, the marketing for your business. There's the selling for your business. There's the production side for your business. There's the bean counting financial side for your business. There's a whole bunch of administrative work that gets in there someplace. Which hats do you wear?
I have all of them.
All of them.
Every
Yeah.
single one that you've, the only thing that I've slowly started to pull back on is I have hired an accountant because I
Uh-huh.
should not be doing my own taxes.
Hmm.
They advise here and there on
Hmm.
things, and I have a legal representation for the business here in
Good.
DC, not a retainer. He's very generous with me asking stupid questions, not
Hmm.
billing me for
Hmm.
but when I domesticated the business out of Virginia into DC, he was who I worked with and
Good.
helped me get it done and made sure it was all compliant.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's an important detail, actually. A lot of people miss that one. All right. So, let's get into marketing.
My favorite.
Exactly. Who do you serve best today? What's your target audience today?
Oh man, my immediate thought for right now, and to be very honest, that is a moving target
Hmm.
every day, depending on who I talk to, who I uh, who I find out needs some kind of work.
Hmm.
I have fought myself on niching into something. I have been
Hmm.
coached by several people to say you got to niche in, you got to niche.
Hmm.
And I was like, but I can do so much work for so many people. What if I just niche into service, not
Hmm.
so much industry? And so the short answer to that, the knee-jerk reaction to that is really funded startups in a growth phase.
Hmm.
Because I have found that it sort of meets a middle road between bootstrap startup
Hmm.
who's still willing to kind of go there with you
Hmm.
all the way, but not as extreme as a Fortune 500 brand with a 50-page brand standard book that I
Hmm.
have to adhere to.
Hmm.
I have found that with funded startups, and by funded I mean some Series A funding, Series B funding, um, there's still that bravery that's there, but it's all built around some. financial instruments that keep them a little more grounded.
Hmm.
So really, I'm becoming more and more comfortable with answering that very question with funded startups in the growth period.
All right, good. All right. So the loaded question for a marketing company, how do you market to go find them?
Shoemakers' kids have no shoes.
Exactly.
I mean, I've heard that phrase so many times, and I was like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
And you look at my Instagram account and you're like, oh, that's how that's possible. I haven't
Yeah.
posted, I coach clients into messaging pillars on social media. Say this thing on LinkedIn, say this thing in Instagram, perform this thing on TikTok. I don't have a TikTok. I am afraid to be on camera. I'm of that millennial generation that's like, I am certain that if I get on TikTok, it will just be the cringiest thing, and those people will eat me alive, and I don't want to put myself through that. Is
Mhm.
that true? I have no idea. The only way to figure out if that is true is to go ahead and do that, but I am
Mhm.
not going to do that.
Mhm.
Um, so how do I market? The short answer is I really do not.
Mhm.
And that is a and I go back on this whole thing too of like, well, how do creative agencies market? When I look at the history of who I've worked with, none of them do any marketing. As a matter
Mhm.
of fact, a couple years ago, or maybe it was even last year, there was some creative agency here in the DMV area. I do not remember their name. They did commercial, like television commercial ads for the agency, and it was the I cringed so much saying them. I was like, oh my God, this is done so terribly. If you have to say these things, then you're not these things. That's kind of been the sort of like cultural cachet that some of the big agencies like Design Army here in DC, they don't do anything. I mean, as far as I know, they don't do anything other than maybe they're so well known and like rightfully so. They're very good at what they do. But they get speaking engagements, they're at conferences, they have a lot of cultural cachet that they have earned over I don't know how long, but I want to say decades. I don't know
Mhm.
if that's true, but all to
Mhm.
say they've really earned it. 5 years in, I really haven't earned it. Um, but so how do I market? Ugh. I don't know. I mean, no, I don't. I post some stuff on Instagram. Oh, we did this project, we did this thing.
Yeah.
I have no content pieces that I can really put up. I kind of just recently started doing podcast things, but that's, I mean, I don't know if that's real helpful marketing. I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything come in from it yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, short answer is I don't do any marketing, and that's kind of the problem.
Yeah. 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 All right. So awesome. Awesome. Who would you see as competition?
Oh man.
And you don't
So
have to name names if you don't want to, but just
I'll,
conceptually.
I'll answer that in two ways. The realistic way, and then the way that I really want it to be.
Yeah.
I would love if Design Army saw my agency and been like, oh, we got to look out for this guy.
Yeah.
They're not saying that.
Hmm.
No one is saying that. I
Okay.
really feel like the biggest competition for me is maybe any other freelancer that's trying to do the same thing. Um, yeah, I really couldn't say definitive only because I just feel so tiny, so small, that I don't I doubt that there's anyone that I am really competing with outside of, I don't know, the the other voice in my head that's like, what are you doing? Stop
Hmm.
doing this.
Hmm.
That guy's an asshole. I don't like that guy in my head. Um, so yeah, I realize that's kind of a weird way to answer that question, but the short answer is I really don't know who my true, actual, realistic competition is.
Okay. All right. Um, let's change topics a little bit. What's been the most memorable of the hurdles you've had to cross in your business?
You know, getting started, I think, was the really big, big hurdle. Um, there's an iceberg story behind the moment where I said, all right, I am going to file the paperwork.
Hmm.
and I'll do my best not to ramble on that one. So the part that I didn't cover in my professional history is that in 2014, I actually started my own business, my first business.
Hmm.
I was let go of my job,
Hmm.
rightfully so, from the market research company that I worked for reasons that I am half proud of, half not proud of.
Hmm.
Um, but I got into an argument with the creative director. I thought I was a bigger deal than I really was, and he was like, "You gotta go."
Hmm.
We remained friends. It was not a great look for me, but I really, really did learn a huge lesson in humility on that one because it doesn't matter how talented someone is, unless you're like a movie star or something, no
Hmm.
one's gonna put up with bullshit. No one.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
shouldn't. It's
Hmm.
stupid. That aside, that's a different conversation. So I started my own business in 2014. 9 weeks after I started the business, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia.
Hmm.
I was visiting my parents here in Virginia or DMV area. All of my stuff was in Los Angeles. I had dirty dishes in my sink. My bed was like clumsily made because I have a 5 a.m. flight. That entire life in 24 hours just
Yeah.
went away, shut down, and then I had like a year of um treatment and just trying to uh I don't want to break it down too deeply, but it was like just really just stay alive.
Hmm.
That was really like the new goal was like, yeah, it's great that you started a business, but you may want to just try to stay alive right now.
Hmm.
And so there was a moment, and it took me a while to actually close that business because I think it was October of 2014. So I was 2 months into chemotherapy treatment, and I had what was called hijack chemotherapy. So it wasn't outpatient. I had to be admitted into the hospital. They would give it to me intravenously for a week, and then you have like 4 days where you feel amazing. And then on the fourth or fifth day, ooh,
Yeah.
everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And
Hmm.
I would be rushed down to the emergency room, and then I would spend out the rest of the month in and out of ICU or whatever. In October, during one of those post chemotherapy treatments, I actually the business was still open. I was on a few different Find Me sort of platforms. I had joined a few chambers of commerce out in Los Angeles, and I was just kind of doing the networking thing. And I had an RFP. I was invited to respond to an RFP, which is unheard of.
Hmm.
Weeks coming out of the gate, opening. In my experience, that just doesn't really happen. And so I got extremely excited. I had never been invited to respond to an RFP. I've designed them, I've worked on them for other companies.
Hmm.
And so I immediately was like, all right, uh, is there any way, is there any way we can stop doing the chemotherapy so that I can go do this, go pitch this client out in LA, and then come back and then can we finish? And the doctors were like, no,
Yeah. Right.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Are you out of
do
your
you not
mind?
understand. Right. And like full disclosure, like in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, there's no way they're going to let you do that. But that like subversive
Yeah.
entrepreneur, like I have to do that. I have to ask. Like I just have to ask.
Hmm.
Um, so then at that point I was like, all right, you really do need to close this business down and you just can't do this right now.
Hmm.
So um sorry, I have already forgotten the question. I was saying so many.
In a way, it's what was the most memorable hurdle?
Oh, right. It
This
was
is
getting
a
started.
pretty
Getting started.
memorable hurdle.
Yes. So, so all good things happened. I was able to go back to Los Angeles. I was sort of cleared for outpatient observation eventually. So in that period of time, I did not want to go back to an agency job. I did not have the energy or the fortitude to start another business. So I thought I got it. My instinct was like get a job in a marketing department for something relatively low engagement, low stress. So I got a job running the art department for a real estate brokerage in
Mhm.
Los Angeles, which
Mhm.
did not accomplish any of those goals. It was super hard, very stressful, not the right environment for me to be in coming out of cancer, or is still kind of like in treatment for cancer. Um, I ended up leaving that job, decided to leave Los Angeles. I was very homesick. I was in this very tough spot because there were three other friends of mine that we were all going through cancer at the same time.
Mm.
It just overlapped incidentally. And in my year back in LA, as I was still going through outpatient and still being monitored, all three of those people died within 3 to 6 months of each other. And so that truly did a number on me that, if I'm being very honest, I'm still sort of working through and trying to reconcile what that really is, because it's this thing of I went through a very I mean I would be faced with life-threatening situations for 6 months, and then all of a sudden that stops. I'm kind of given a yellow light to get back to my life. I'm in LA trying to get my life back. And when I say trying to get my life back, I mean I literally moved back to the neighborhood that I lived in. I was around the corner from my old apartment only because I couldn't get my old apartment back. And in that year of mentally trying to sprint back to where I was pre-cancer, like just trying to get back to that headspace and that I can go do it and da da da. All three of these people died, and I was like, oh my God, this
Mm.
is the cruelest joke that I think I have ever been a part of. This is insane. So, all to say, Los Angeles was not really the right place for me to be at that time. Moved back to DC. My family is here. My everyone is on the East Coast. My parents live down in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It made more
Mhm.
sense mentally just to be in an arguably calmer environment than
Yeah,
LA. DC
yeah.
is not necessarily calmer than LA, but in my perception of the world, it definitely was.
Yeah.
Um, so I got a job. I actually was working internally with Marriott for a little while, and then I was picked up by someone that I was just introduced to by happenstance. His name is Kevin Richards. He's the chief creative officer for an agency that's now called Evoke. At the time, it was Subject Matter. He was the most generous boss I think I've ever had. He gave me some freelance work, freelanced me for a little while, and said, "Okay, come on board." Came on to board with Subject Matter. At the time, it was called Subject Matter. Was there for about 3 years. Then COVID, freelance overload, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm now ready to do this. But leading up to that, that whole 10, well, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years from the time that I was moved back to LA, try to sprint to get my life back, all the way up to 2021, where I really made the choice. The weeks and months leading up to that decision to really open and leave a very secure W-2 job um, was hard. I mean, that was really hard. Uh, I would do this thing during COVID, where we couldn't go anywhere, which for a homebody, that's like the best thing I could ever hear. But I would go on these really, really long drives, just where no destination. I would just sort of like intentionally get lost somewhere and then find my way back just to kill time. But
Mm.
in on those drives, that's where I would really start envisioning. And it started with, all right, if you were to put together a website for your freelance work, what projects could you actually reasonably put on there? Because I didn't want to put any of the work that I did at Subject Matter because they legally own that work. I can't really position myself as an agency and saying, "Oh, I did this stuff for, these big clients," when I didn't. So I was trying to like run through the list of like what are the real freelance projects that I've worked on that I can either revise or just rework a little bit and post. And that's where that started. It was just these small steps. I literally have that notebook sitting around here somewhere. And when I get through those periods of time where I get really scared that the business won't last, or I get overly stressed out or frustrated with, you know, the ins and outs of just running a small business, I'll look at that book again and I'll look at that punch list of all those things and all of that sort of wish list of this is what I would love, and that will anchor me back to that moment, that really, really big barrier, that first barrier of just saying, yeah, let's just go do it.
Hmm. Good, 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 good. What's the future look like? 5, 10 years? Where will you
You
be?
know, I wish I had a clearer vision for that. I have the magic wand vision where it's you wave a wand, you get whatever you want.
Hmm.
That looks like uh I still love the idea of having a brick and mortar office that
Hmm.
is cool, that has like
Hmm.
a cool, ridiculous creative vibe to it. There's a
Hmm.
property that's available now for rent. It's an office space on Q and 14th, just
Hmm.
above a restaurant that I think was a real estate brokerage firm or something like that. I have studied that imprint so many times and have
Hmm.
mapped out in my head how I would configure it. I have identified two or three office spaces in DC that I would just love
Hmm.
to like have. Nothing crazy big, nothing on like where the lobbying firms are, but like, sort of neighborhood-ish brick and mortar
Hmm.
with a staff of like, I don't know, like two really good strategists, an in-house developer, an animator, video production. I would love to do video production work. I don't know how to do it, but I love thinking in that frame of mind of how do we tell a brand story but do it with video and doing
Hmm.
it with a proper like storyline. And incidentally, I mean, that is where the industry is headed right now. The fact that I don't know video production is a little scary.
Hmm.
Um, but all to say that that's sort of the magic wand I wave and I get all those things. Um, the other piece of that is could I stay content just doing this, just being a freelancer? As long as I could see a world where like, yeah, as long as I can like continue to pay all the bills that I have and keep things running, yeah, I could just be a freelancer and that's also fine.
Hmm.
But I haven't let go of that vision of just saying, "Oh, I would love, this just a cool space of fun stuff, creating a work environment that is different from the one that I kind of came up through."
Hmm.
That is actually kind of a big one because I I had this one sort of ridiculous idea. I don't know that I would actually do it. And it probably reveals a little too much about me, but I in my hypothesis days, so pre-cancer days, I had a very, very uh big creative ego that was really just compensating for just the fear that I wasn't creative enough or I wasn't really good enough.
Hmm.
And that made me very sensitive to feedback. I would get very bristly very quickly about the stupidest things. One of the arguments that I had with this creative director that rightfully fired me is that he was standing over my shoulder. He was like, "Why don't you move that thing over like 3 pixels?" And I lost it. And unreasonably, I mean, all the frustration that I had felt from like the, years in the industry, or not even years. I was a young designer, just came out. Um, but I mentioned that to say, I love this idea of like having a work environment where it's okay for people to get angry. It's okay for sensitive creatives to be sensitive when you get ridiculous feedback because you are going to get ridiculous feedback. It happens 100% of the time. People don't, it's not it's not personal. It's just, coming from a place where people just don't know and blah blah blah. So I had this idea of like, wouldn't it be so fun to have like an anger room in the office where
Hmm.
you could just go in with a bat and like hit something, just
Hmm.
get that frustration out, and then come back to a meeting and just have a regular meeting.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if that I don't really know if that makes sense. But it was like a passing thought that I had. But it all kind of ladders up to this idea of creating a work environment that that's helpful for creative people to be in, but also helpful for non-creative people to be in because God knows I need the non-creative brain attached to 100% of what I am doing. Because when you let a creative loose in a meeting, you never really know how it's going to go.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. So this is good. This is good. Awful lot of good stuff here. So before we wrap up, and we're getting to a good wrap up point here, let's do a few rapid fire questions. Let's have some fun with it. This is not the off the cuff kind of questions.
Okay.
What's the key to success for you?
Perseverance. Just keep going. Just
Yeah.
keep going.
Yep. Good. 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 If we walked out of this, you walked into the coffee shop next door, and met somebody who was just at that stage where he's ready to sign the paper to start the business, what's one piece
Hmm.
of advice you would give him?
Hire a bookkeeper. Don't try to do your
That's a
books
good one.
yourself. Hire a bookkeeper.
Yeah, good, good one, good one. A professional bookkeeper, one who knows what
Yes.
they're doing. Yeah,
Don't
good.
YouTube your way through QuickBooks. It doesn't work. I've tried it. It does not work.
Yeah, good, good. What's one book you're reading now or have read recently that's had impact on your
Uh,
business?
the sub, the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Good, awesome,
Love that one.
very good. So you've had a good journey. You've done a lot of stuff, been through a lot of things. What are you most proud of in this business journey?
I'm most proud of the fact that I am still doing it.
Hmm.
Um, there are lean months and there are non-lean months.
Hmm.
It's when you're in those lean months, that self-doubt that will,
Hmm.
in my experience, is always there. It is always
Hmm.
there. But
Hmm.
he gets louder and louder and louder, the emptier my calendar looks.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
it becomes this whole thing of really just keep going. You have to just keep moving. Do
Good.
one thing. Yeah, just do one thing that feels productive when you don't feel like being productive.
Yeah, so back to the persistence.
Yes.
Okay. Good, good. Just kind of following up on something you said a little while ago. If you had that magic wand and you could magically improve one thing today, what would it be?
Oh, man. Improve one thing today, it would be, oh man, I thought of like 20 things. Um, improve one thing. I would say my new business strategy. I would have a
Mhm.
very tight, locked new business strategy and procedure, like a
Awesome.
process.
I like that. That's good. That's a very good one. All right. So, most important question, how can people who want to know more get in contact with you?
Go to the website.
Hmm.
I would love to send you to my Instagram, but as we covered earlier, that's not going to get you very far.
Hmm.
So the website is walladesign.co. Co. I went with the .co, thought it felt cooler. That was also maybe a mistake because people are like, "Did you mean .com?" No, .co.
Got it.
Walladesign.
Good. Last question. What's most inspiring to you today?
It's actually any underdog story.
Hmm.
I mean, there's one clip that came up on Instagram that went around for a while, and it's a NASCAR race. I don't know anything about NASCAR. I know nothing about that other than
Hmm.
it sounds fun because you can drive really fast and recklessly. But there's
Hmm.
like some guy that was like in 10th place. His car was like falling apart or whatever, and he did this move, which is now illegal, I found out in race car world, where he like just he's on the mic with his guy or whatever. And he's like, you got to do something. You got to do something. He's like, all right, I'm just gonna put the floor to the pedal, or wait, pedal to the floor, and I'm gonna keep going until I see God or a checkered flag. And then he like hugs the curve and just bangs the car up against the wall and just gets ahead of everyone, ends up breaking a record and places. I saw that clip, I heard that phrase, and I was like, that's what it feels like to be in small business, to run a small business. You are battered, you are always feeling behind, but in that way of persevering, you just put the pedal to the floor and you keep going until you see God or a checkered flag. And I love that.
Back to persistence.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Don't stop.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. This is awesome. Awesome. Very good. So I've really enjoyed this. This is a good story. This is very good. So thank you very much for sharing all of this. And for the audience, I encourage all of you watching, save this show, come back, watch it again. Kevin's given some really good insights and um, probably told some stories that some of us have experienced in different ways as well, and shown how you get out of it. You just keep going. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications every time a new conversation like this one drops. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing. You've shared an awful lot with us, and I want to give you a very special thank you for sharing it with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I really love talking about myself.